Hi, you guys. I'm going to read the last page of chapter 3 so that you can get caught up on where we are. Okay? Instead of explaining to Newman just where Satan came from, God allowed him to see into the past. Newman said in a very surprised voice, "So his name is Lucifer and he used to be an angel?" God said not only was he an angel, but he was the second of 4 archangels, the morning star, the bringer of light. He lived in harmony with others until he wanted to rule using the evil that was growing inside of him. When he was cast down from heaven, it started a war that exists now and will exist until I come again, as I promised I would do through my son Jesus. Until then, I will send my warriors, such as yourself, to fight this evil and bring to me all those who want their right place in heaven. I hope that's you. I know it's me. Newman said, "God, now more than ever, I want to be the warrior that you make me." God said, "Then it will be done." Chapter 4. Up to this moment, Newman felt such a seriousness about things, but as soon as God said, "Then it will be done," the atmosphere changed and became brighter and lighter, and Newman found himself getting very excited again. Newman's thoughts kicked in about being human, and he asked God, "Well, what will I look like as a human?" Newman thought his image on the moon looked like an older man, and he wondered if human Newman would look like that. No, Newman, you'll be what people might describe as a cool-looking dude. Some might even say you look like a superhero. Humans really like superheroes, but wait till they get a look at you. For the first time, Newman laughed out loud. He really liked how it felt to laugh, and he thought, that felt great. I like laughing. I want to do a lot more of that. And then he did it again. Newman was so glad to know God has a sense of humor and that he'd given him one too. God said, "Newman, instead of telling you what you'll look like, I think it's time you just become superhuman Newman." With that, an asteroid slammed into the moon right where Newman's chest is. Right there. A giant crater was formed in the shape of a starburst around it. Humans call this crater Tycho, Tycho. As the dust cleared, the form of a man now stood on the moon. It was human Newman. God wasn't kidding when he said he would look different. He had a much nicer mustache with a little patch of hair under his bottom lip. He had a lot of shoulder-length hair that was pulled back into a ponytail, and above that, yeah, you guessed it, his man bun. He had a very muscular body. He's even puffy. He's a big dude. Let's see. He had a very muscular body that was dressed in a blue shirt, beige pants, and even had on socks and shoes. He had a pair of sunglasses that were way cool, and around his neck there hung a gold chain with the emblem of a starburst. It's called an amulet. Anyway, God told him that in the not-so-distant future, I will reveal to you the special powers that the sunglasses and the starburst hold. But for now, you'll need to get to know the human side of being human. Well, unbeknownst to Newman, God really had some amazing plans about the super part of being superhuman as well. As he stood on the moon, feeling the ground under his feet, he started there and worked his way up his new body, looking at himself from toe to head. Whew. He couldn't actually see his own head, so he put his hands on his head and said, "Wow, I got a lot of hair." Newman held out his strong arms and raised up and flexed his fingers in front of his face. Then he raised his leg and ran his hand over his thigh. And then he took his first step as a human. Then he started just walking around in a circle. He just couldn't believe how God had recreated him into a real, live human being. Newman was overwhelmed, and now this was the most excited he had ever been. He just keeps getting more and more excited. I would too. This is what God turned him into. Told you he was puffy. He's a big dude. He's going to help us. Newman looked towards God's voice with tears in his brand new eyes, and he said, "Thank you, God, for blessing me and for loving me. I have loved watching over the world and keeping it safe for all this time, but I've wanted to be this from the very first day I saw you creating Adam and Eve. Now I feel the happiness that I saw on their faces that day. God said, "You're welcome, Newman." God told Newman that even though he will have a human form, his image will remain in the moon for all of eternity, so we can see it. Okay, he will be there watching over us as well as helping us on earth, and now and forever we can look at the image of Newman in the moon and see with our eyes a sign from God that he always had Newman watching over us, and he always will. God's creation will have another superhuman sent from him that walks among us, teaching us about him, spreading his word and his love all over the world. Now, this isn't written, but I want to. There was another human, superhuman, that walked it. It was Jesus. And Jesus is Newman's superhero, by the way. All right, chapter 5. It was way past Donnie's bedtime. He was trying really hard to go to sleep, but he just kept tossing and turning. He was thinking about how his day started out and hoping that tomorrow wouldn't be an instant replay. See, his next-door neighbor and former friend Jack and his little buddy D'Angelo started Donnie's day off by snatching his lunch bag away from him and throwing it in a puddle of water. That wasn't very nice. Donnie quickly picked it up and tried to dry it off with the sleeve of his shirt, but when he did that, the bag ripped open and everything fell out. Thanks to Mom's heavy-duty sandwich bags, he was able to save the bologna sandwich, but the juice box, but the banana didn't fare too well. D'Angelo ran over and stomped on it, which brought a big laugh from Jack's dad. Now, see, the bus stop just happened to be a few doors down from their houses, so Charlie could see everything that happened there. Now it seemed like this was his new morning ritual, sitting on the porch and egging his kid on to do mean things to Donnie. Donnie found himself wishing that Charlie wouldn't have come back to live with Jack and his mom, but instantly he felt bad for thinking that, since he knew what it was like not to have your dad around. Donnie knew that Jack loved his dad, but it was probably very confusing having him back in their lives when all he seems to do is yell at Jack's mom, drink beer, and make Jack behave differently. Or should I say misbehave differently. Donnie thought back to a time before Charlie came back, when Jack and his mom, Rachel, first moved in next door. They both seemed to like the fact that they had a lot in common. They were the same age, they'd be going to the same school, they both really liked playing basketball, and they liked playing the same video games. And they both really liked pizza. So for a couple of months, they hung out after school, playing hoops and video games. Their friendship seemed to be going pretty well, but then everything came to a crashing halt. And now Donnie was trying to figure out why Jack was being someone he didn't know anymore. And if he kept acting the way he's acting, Donnie didn't want to know him. Now whenever Donnie tried to say hi to Jack, he would ignore him or say something kind of mean, especially if his dad was sitting on the porch watching them, and he always was. One day, Donnie tried one more time to stay friends with Jack. As he walked past the house where Jack was sitting on the porch with his dad, Donnie asked, "You want to play some hoops?" But instead of Jack answering, his dad said, "He's got better things to do than play with sissies." And then he laughed really loud as he nudged Jack with his shoulder so hard enough that he almost pushed him off the steps. Jack only half-heartedly laughed with his dad as he got up and went inside. Ever since then, the only interaction between them is Jack saying something snippy to Donnie or just ignoring him altogether. Donnie let out a little sigh as he threw off his blanket. He started wishing that his dad was there so he could ask him what to do about his ex-friend and his really mean dad. Donnie's dad, Randall, always knew how to turn something around and make it make sense. There wasn't anything that they couldn't talk about together. Sometimes they'd sit for hours talking and fishing, or talking and throwing the baseball back and forth. It seemed like they were always going places and doing fun things together. Then all of a sudden, Randall got sick. At first, nobody would tell Donnie what was really going on with his dad. And then one day, Donnie went to see him at the hospital. As Donnie came into the room, Randall patted the bed beside him. Donnie crawled up and sat beside him, and for the next couple of hours, they talked, they laughed, and then they talked some more, and Donnie and his dad tried to make sense of things. Not too long after that day, Randall passed away. Donnie wiped the wet eyes with a corner of his bed sheet and tossed and turned and found himself looking out the window at the full moon. Wow, the moon looks really bright tonight, he thought. As he stared at the moon, he began to see something. He squeezed his eyes shut, thinking they were playing tricks on him, but when he opened them up again, it was still there. It was the image of a man. Yeah, he thought. It looks like the left side of a man's face. He could make out a nose, a mustache, his chin, his ear. It even looks like he's wearing sunglasses. Wow, there really is a man in the moon, he thought. For some reason that Donnie didn't understand, the name Newman came into his head, and without even thinking about it further, he quietly said, "Hello, Newman." After a couple more minutes of looking at Newman, Donnie said a little louder, "Newman, I don't know much about heaven, but if that's where my dad is, then you're probably closer to him than me. So maybe you could tell him that I miss him and that I'm trying really hard to be good like I promised. Would you do that for me, Newman?" He couldn't believe how much better he felt after doing that. It seemed like somebody flipped a switch, and all of a sudden, he wasn't dreading the new day anymore. His eyes got very tired. He yawned and pulled up his covers and fell fast asleep. Chapter 6. Newman was still humbly admiring the new human form that God had given him and trying to wrap his mind around being a human. No, superhuman. Either way, this is going to take some time getting used to, he thought. He was just about to ask God what comes next when he heard something. He didn't know what it was, but he liked it. The sound got louder and clearer, and even though he had never heard one before, he suddenly knew it was a voice of a young boy. It surprised him that he was able to hear a human on Earth while he was still on the moon. He hadn't been able to do that before. He heard the voice say, "I don't know much about heaven, but if that's where my dad is, then you're probably closer to him than me. So could you tell him that I miss him and that I'm trying hard to be good like I promised? Would you do that for me, Newman?" Newman looked in the direction that God's voice usually came from and asked, "Who's that voice from? And why is he talking to my image in the moon? And how does he know my name?" God answered, "That is a little boy named Donnie, and he's the first person that you'll help when you go to Earth as a superhuman. As your image remains in the moon for humans to see with their eyes and show to one another, it will also be one of the ways that you hear from those you need to hear from. I might have helped Donnie a little bit with your name and seeing your image a little bit clearer, but Donnie's life is getting very hard to handle, and he needs your help. He and his mom, Gail, are trying to be strong for each other, but they had to make a lot of changes since Randall passed away. He was the love of Gail's life, and he was Donnie's best friend as well as his dad. He was a good man, a good father and a good husband, and he made a good living and provided well for his family, but he didn't think that he'd get sick and die before he was even 50, so he didn't plan for the future to take care of Gail and Donnie. So they had to make a lot of changes in their lives, selling their big house for a smaller one in a less nice neighborhood. Gail, having to go back to work, leaves Donnie on his own for most of the day. So now Gail has dealt with guilt. So now Gail has guilt to deal with, as well as mourning the death of her husband. I'm going to stop there for just a second, and I want those of you out there who maybe you're a little older and mom and dad work a lot and you need somebody to express yourself to. I want to encourage you to email Nana Jen, and I would talk to you. I really will. And I would tell you what Newman would tell you and let you know that you have a friend no matter what. I want to be your friend. That's why I'm Nana Jen. I will be anybody's Nana. I'm best when I'm Nana. I love it. Anyway, back to the story. Okay. You know, the death or the loss of a loved one is harder for some than others. And Gail is doing well considering, but Donnie has an enemy preying on him right now and taking away the only friend he's had in a while. There are people I've chosen for you to begin These are the people I've chosen for you to begin your journey with. You will become a friend to Donnie. You will enter his life in a way that is comfortable to him. You'll meet Donnie as the janitor at his school. You'll be able to change a few things as you need to so that you can do what needs to be done. And then when the time is right, you'll tell Donnie. You will let Donnie know that his dad received his message and he's waiting for him. So, like so many others who are waiting for their loved ones too. Let Donnie know that when his dad was in the hospital, I sent an earthly angel to tell him about the sacrifice Jesus made for him, about the forgiveness of sin, and she made it all make sense to him. Tell Donnie that his dad says he loves him and he's so proud of him, and that he'll see him again in heaven. Newman said, "Thank you, God, for giving me the honor of delivering such an important message to not only Donnie, but to the rest of the humans that I'll be teaching about you. I know that I have a lot to discover as a human, but I know if I do your will over mine and do everything with the power of love, I won't face anything or anyone that I can't handle. Satan doesn't stand a chance." God said, and that's what all humans need to understand. Newman was now armed with a superhuman body, knowledge, and understanding, and he has the greatest power of all, which is love. And God still hasn't revealed the powers that his glasses and his starburst hold. I think Satan better watch his you-know-what. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to end this video because it's long, and I'm just going to start another video and start with chapter 7.